I have to say my initial experience at OK was much the same. I was coaching some teams, and we came back after Christmas, and there was an email from the big consultancy that was guiding us. And it said, "Thou shalt use OKRs." And I could give you 20 good reasons why they weren't a good idea and why they'd fail. And I was pissed off. I thought, you know what? Rather than just walking out, let's treat this like an experiment. And let's see if we can use them for positive reasons. And I surprised myself. And we were really successful. And I'll tell you some about that. One of the things that came out of that was I wrote my notes, and they became this book. A little thing called lockdown intervened as well, so I had lots of time to write the book. This was originally my notes to myself. The book I wish I'd had when that email arrived saying, "Thou shalt use OKRs." My interpretation of how we make OKRs Agile compatible. Because there's a warning there. OKRs used naively or used by a book based on 1970s management does not fit the Agile world. So I've been giving this talk, Objective-Driven Agility, for about a year. But when we were setting the conference up, Paul asked if we could have a look to the future. Perhaps because I'm closing the conference, we want to look to the future. So this isn't my usual objective-driven agility. It contains a lot of my usual stuff, but it's also got more of a future perspective where we might be going with this thing we call Agile, and we love, and we hate. But let me make a little sales pitch for you. I click. This clicker works great when I test it, but when I use it in anger... Okay, there you go. I'm going to raffle off this book. If you wonder over that URL, stick your name in. At the end, if we've got time, I will randomly select one of you, and you can have this book. It's really good if I give it to you today, because if I try and post it from the UK, I have to now fill in a customs form. Isn't that wonderful? And sometimes the post offices in Europe charge you more to receive the book. So I just order the book from Amazon Germany to deliver wherever in Europe. So fill in your name. I'll repeat that at the end if you don't get it. So, a bit of history. Before there was extreme programming, Ward Cunningham wrote the episodes pattern language. 1995, 30 years ago. And then we had a little thing called the Y2K bug. Anyone here remember the Y2K bug? Yeah, Jim's nodding, some hand. I suspect most of you are too young. I kind of sidestepped the Y2K bug, but I was working on a death march project in the late 90s. And one day I picked up this book, Dynamics of Software Development by Jim McCarthy. And he said some completely crazy things. I had spent the years after I graduated feeling guilty that we didn't do it properly. And I read Jim's book, and it said, there's other ways of doing things. Wow. That book was the start of my Agile journey. And that was also published in 95. Agile Manifesto, 2010. I'm guessing a fair few of you weren't even in this industry in 2010. I don't know whether 2010 is the right year, whether it should be a bit sooner, a bit later, but I am guessing when we talk about Agile and when we talk about the waterfall, it's meaningless to a lot of you because you've never experienced the waterfall. You've never experienced the ISO 9000 world. You've never experienced volumes of documents. We can't talk about Agile in terms of what Agile is relative to waterfall because you don't know what it is. So let's talk about how I define Agile. And of course, I have my own patent Agile method called Zanpan. For me, Agile is fundamentally learning. Agile is the act of learning. And when we talk about agile organizations, what we are talking about is a much older idea of a learning organization. An organization that learns about the technology, about the customers, and about how you bring them together in a thing called a process, and how we improve. And from that beginning, we get to say the opposite of agile is not waterfall. The opposite of agile is static. The opposite of agile is not changing. Agile is learning and changing. If you are not learning and changing, you are not agile. I don't care how many Kanban boards you have, how many sprints you do, how big your backlog is. If you're not learning and changing, you're not agile. Or to put it another way, go back. The only thing you can do wrong in agile is to do the same thing as you did 3 months ago. You should always be trying to improve, learning from what you're doing, seeing how you can make it better, trying things. Not everything will work. Sometimes you'll need to unroll your changes. Now, hopefully you're all nodding and agreeing with that. But think about it. You might be doing perfect Scrum today, but in 3 months' time, you should be doing imperfect Scrum. You may be doing perfect Safe today, but in 3 months' time, you should be doing imperfect Safe. You should be going further. This also means that every agile initiative is flawed. It is by doing agile that we increase our agility. Agile is the process of learning and changing and improving. Agile is not an endpoint, you know that. Agile is the change process because we are learning and changing and improving. So, agility over agile. I've heard a few people say agile this week. Say agility. I think that's where we're moving. We are talking about the outcome over the method. What we want is to have agility in our organizations. And by agility, we take it from the dictionary, it's the ability to maneuver at speed. By doing agile, we learn to have agility. And yes, this does all come onto OKRs. But first, let us step back in time a bit over 100 years and talk about electricity. It's a bit of a cliche to say the world is changing faster than ever before. But that might not be true. Things changed a lot in the 1930s. Aeroplanes started to be mass-produced. We started to go on airplanes. People started to have cars. Electricity got rolled out to the masses. And we invented indoor plumbing. Okay, so if I give you a choice between having the internet and indoor plumbing, you've got to give one up. Who wants to give up the internet and keep their indoor plumbing? A few hands up here. And who will give up indoor plumbing and go with the internet? Nobody. There's usually one person down here, okay? One person would rather have the internet and indoor plumbing. It's a free country. You might not have so many friends if you smell. Back to electricity. I love this picture because this picture comes from when electricity was going into factories in about 1890, 1900 something. Before electricity, factories needed energy to power machines. The defining thing about factories is we use machines. Machines need energy. Before electricity, We needed some motion. And initially it came from water wheels. So where we found a river, we could put a water wheel, and the water wheel gave us motion, energy, and you ran, you can just see here, these bus bars along the factory. And they transmitted the energy from the water into the factory. We moved on to steam engines later on, but you tended to have a big centralized steam engine, and you sent the energy down a bus bar to your machines. This is why, if you look at pictures of early factories, they're long and thin. If you ever see a picture of Ford's River Rouge factory, it's long and thin. Because you needed to design your factories and your machines along a bar that took the energy long and thin. Your layout of your machines was dictated by your energy source. That also meant your processes were dictated by your energy, because these belts that connect the machines to the bus bar, to the power, they could be leather or rubber, and they would break. And if one of them broke, and they did break, that machine stopped, and to replace it, you had to stop the entire production line. Anyone know their Toyota Andon cords? The reason you stop the car production line, or any other production line, is you need to reconnect the belt. So your entire factory design, the layout of your machines, your processes, was dictated by that power source. You've also got here a man with electricity. And notice, electricity doesn't have to move in the same straight lines. Electricity gives you power tools, handheld tools. You can do things with electric tools you couldn't do with your traditional machines. Because electricity was more flexible, you could change your layout. But you didn't move there immediately. You still had factories that were long and thin. You just brought electricity in. As you brought electricity in, to get the full benefits of electricity, you needed to change your processes. In the first instance, electricity allowed you to run your factories more cheaply, more efficiently, you get more out. But to really get the benefits, you have to change your processes. Any business analysts in the room? Yeah. Business Analysis 101. You don't get the benefit from the new technology. You get the full benefit when you change the processes. Okay? The same is true here. Until you re-engineer your processes to take advantage of the new tools you can have with electricity, you don't get the full benefit. So you need to change your processes to go with your new tools, and that may mean you need to redesign your factories. And redesigning a factory takes time. You need to physically build it. So the processes change, the factory design changes, and then we can get the full benefit of electricity. And there are economists who say we didn't get the full benefit of electricity until like the 1950s and the 1960s. You could even argue that a lot of what happened in Japan with Toyota and Lean comes from electricity. And the reason it happened in Japan first was they had to build new factories in 1946. Whereas American factories were still intact. And you can't write off those factories, you have to keep using them. Yeah? And this is a reoccurring story in technology. We get a new technology, and in the first case, we do the same things as we did before, but we do them faster. And when we do them faster, the price comes down. And when the price comes down, consumption goes up. Electricity replaced candles, didn't it? You don't have candles in your house. But you know there are more candles manufactured and sold today than ever before in human history. We didn't get rid of candles because we had electric light. We found a new use for candles. Okay? Yes, that does help. There's more people. More people want candles, but the population keeps growing. Yeah. So in the first instance, you do the same things faster. And that's also going to apply with artificial intelligence. We use artificial intelligence. Let's trust the people who tell us AI will write code. AI will write more code. It will write code more cheaply. Therefore, we'll have more code. Therefore, we'll have more bugs to fix. We'll also need more testers. We won't get a full benefit until we start to change our processes. When you change your processes, you get more benefit. It also opens the door to innovation. You get innovations coming out of the process change. And that means you're back to the beginning. We have new technology, we exploit it, we change our processes, we see new innovations, the innovations and new technology we repeat. And there's every reason to think this will keep on playing out. So it raises the question, when we went from 1960s, 1970s silicon chips here with a few hundred transistors to Raspberry Pis with a few billion, and your the smartphone in your pocket's probably got about 6 billion transistors. That was a big technology change. Where's the process change? That's the process change. The thing you call Agile is the set of processes that accompanies digital technology. It happened with software developers first because they had the digital tools first. Nobody does digital transformation and digital businesses in a waterfall model. This is the technology change at the top. We get our process change. Digital business is the next innovation, right? Tim O'Reilly, who you all know from publishing, he said this a few years ago. A large part of the work done by the likes of Google and Amazon is performed by software and algorithms. The programs are the workers. The humans who develop the programs are the managers. So you know how all you coders out there love to hate managers. The bad news is you are a manager. You are managing the machines that do the work. How's your management training going? Which actually is quite an issue. We need to think about how people work with their machines. Because if we have people and machines, and the people have authority, the people can think and act like managers and make decisions, you will get more value than if you have the people and the machines, and the person can't make decisions. They have to go to their manager, goes to their manager. Yeah, there's more value when you give authority to the people doing the work. So Agile processes should be moving decision-making closer to where the work is happening, because the people who are doing the work, instructing the machines, are the managers and need the authority. This is why we want to reorganize our companies, redesign them, push authority down. Yes. Unfortunately, as a few people have mentioned this week, it can be difficult to get the authority into the team. Some managers are loath to let people make decisions. So back to this. If we're going to do that maneuvering at speed, we need to be able to move fast. Moving fast means that we need to do things like reducing our cognitive load, reducing the debt, the liabilities we're carrying. We need to upskill our people. If we're going to maneuver, we need to be able to change direction, which means that we need to recognize we need to change direction, we need to make a decision, we need to get people to act on that decision. And recognizing we need a decision to make and acting on it means people need to share the goals. And it also means that we need to distribute the decision making. So, question for you. Can any of you think of a war where one side is large and is command and controlled from a central authority. And the other side has a lot of distributed decision-making and military units in the field who are seeking targets of opportunity and reacting to the attackers as they are coming on. I wonder if you've ever seen that in the military. A big centrally controlled army faced with a much more agile army where the unit commanders make their decisions. I know of at least 2 examples that relate to this area of land. It's also standard US military doctrine. It's called mission command. They push out decision-making to the people in the units. I'm going to concentrate for the rest of this talk on just 3 aspects of this: the goals, the cognitive load, and decision-making. Cognitive load is a big issue. As we increase our technology, we increase the amount of thinking we need to do. We need to fight back against that. We can do that through reducing our WIP, making local decisions, having fast feedback, technical excellence. Most importantly, we do it simply by focusing on deciding that there are some things we are going to work with, and the slide is going to change any moment now. Some things we are going to work with, and we're going to push other stuff to the side. If you're going to focus, if you're going to have strategy, you need to say no. You don't have a strategy and you don't have focus if you say yes to everything you ever asked for. You need to narrow your vision. You need to focus on a few things and prioritize them. Remove the distractions. Which also means you need to remove your false goals. It's not about doing features. It's not about doing story points, stories, more velocity. It's not even about on schedule, on budget, or scope. They are all proxy measurements. We need to focus on our goals, the things we want to achieve, the outcomes, the objectives. So, put the outcomes above the outputs. Or as the civil rights movement used to say, keep your eyes on the prize. Whenever we get into chasing story points, velocity, on schedule, on budget, we're thinking about interim things which don't contribute to the outcome we want. We need to keep going back and saying, what is the outcome we want? How are we advancing it? Are we advancing on it? Are we going forward? Back to decision making. This means that the traditional management structure needs to change. As we were saying, we want to devolve the authority so the people doing the work, the people closest to the customer, the people closest to the technology have got the authority to make decisions. We distribute the authority as well. And that also means we're distributing the planning. Some of you may have seen a thread on LinkedIn this week, which I think Jim started, and somebody was complaining about there being no planning in Agile. There's more planning in Agile because everyone should be involved, and it happens regularly. It used to be that guy at the top did all the planning and came out and gifted it to you. Now you're all sitting in a planning meeting every 2 weeks talking about it. The total amount of planning is more because we're sharing it around. And that means the people closest to our customers are making decisions. The people closest to the customers are using machines to deliver the products customers want. If every time there's a decision needs to be made, they need to go up levels and come down, that's delay, that's loss of value. So, we're distributing it, or shared leadership. Move away from self-organizing, self-management, shared leadership. Oh, you weren't. Has this company made it to Krakow yet? Uniqlo. Cheap Japanese clothes. I don't have any on today, but they're very good. They're very cheap. Uniqlo practice a Japanese technique called Zenin Keikei. Zenin Keikei should be up there with Kaizen and Kanban and all those other Japanese words you love. It translates approximately to everyone a manager. Management participation by all employees. Remember what Tim O'Reilly said, the people who instruct the machines are the managers. You are instructing the machines, you are making management decisions. So everybody needs to be able to have a management mindset. And yes, that probably does mean some more management training. Uniqlo actually get this from a company called Kyocera, who you probably know for printers if you know them. They do other things in Japan. The founder of Kyocera, Kazui Inamori, invented this system he calls amoeba management. Amoeba management directly says, stimulates management by all. It's a management control system that concentrates power in employees. And it does this by dividing the company into amoebas. Each amoeba is a self-contained business unit. Each amoeba has its own accounting system. We are pushing power out to the units delivering to the customers. So, you're all managers, you're all making decisions. How do we make sure the decisions you are making are consistent? That the people over here aren't making one set of management decisions that contradict the people over here? There's a lot of things we could talk about, but let's talk about shared goals. Goals that you have agreed with your peers and the other people in your organization that are understood by your team and are quantified. Put some numbers against them. And what we want is a framework for setting goals and objectives which is compatible with Agile. So we'd like stable intermediate goals. I've stolen this. There is a pattern called Stable Intermediate Forms written by Kevlin Henney, which takes its inspiration from rock climbing. You know, a rock climber climbs up and he gets somewhere and it's safe. And the rock climber can relax. And the rock climber works out where they are moving next. And then they move up to the next safe place. And they move up to the next safe place. It's like your releases. Every time you make a release to customers, you're in a safe, intermediate place. You are going to go somewhere else, but right now, you're somewhere safe. And we move somewhere else. Other good Agile ideas, time boxing, an iterative process, sharing these things. These are the attributes we should look for in a goal-setting process. Conveniently, there's already a process that pretty much matches this. And it's called OKRs. It came out of Intel in the 1970s. So here's your warning. If you pick up a book that describes Intel in the 1970s, it's not going to be Agile. Okay? Agile did not exist at Intel in the 1970s. We need to take the process Intel invented and update it for the 21st century where the machines are doing the work. And if you look at OKRs, the objective, the outcome you want to create, the key results should not be a to-do list. They describe that outcome. They are your success criteria for that outcome. Doesn't that sound familiar? What is it our developers do? Test-driven development. What do you want the function to do? What are the tests? How do we apply that further up? Acceptance test-driven development. Behavior-driven development. What is the outcome we want to bring about? How are we going to measure that outcome has been reached? OKRs are effectively test-first management. In the next 10 weeks, 3 months, what is the outcome the team want to bring about? What are the attributes of that outcome that will define success? Right, now let's do something to try and reach that outcome and meet those success criteria. Looked at that way, OKRs are very agile. But we should note that the outcomes, the objectives, the goals we're trying to create are goals within goals within goals. All companies exist for a purpose. If your company's purpose is to make money and return to shareholders, I'm very sorry, that's not a very good purpose. There are plenty of research studies out there that tell you profit is not a good objective for a company. Successful companies are not profitable companies. Successful companies make profit as a result of being successful. Profit is a side effect. Your company, I hope, has some greater purpose in mind. If you're a drug company, to improve healthcare. If you're a construction company, to build things. If you're a bank, to provide financial services, make the world a better place, whatever. For larger companies, there will be multiple missions embedded. A bank will have different divisions, investment, retail, etc., etc. And within those missions will be products or services. And you can think about it in the next quarter, the next few months, and down at the sprint level. What we want to do is be able to connect the things you're doing down here, the day-to-day things, the things in your sprint iteration, and line up all those goals and be able to put a straight line through them. So when we are making decisions on what we tell the customers and what we tell the machine, all those things line up. So we need to work on them. Now, traditional management worked because the person at the top there shouted very loudly, and they used a technique called management by objective. And many people interpret OKRs as a modern version of management by objective. So the person at the top tells the person below them, and the person below them tells the person below them. And as Tim was just pointing out to me over lunch, once you get two layers between people, the message doesn't travel. The people at the top don't know what the people two layers below them are doing. This is traditional management. But, I sometimes call it cascading OKRs when people do it like this. This is not a good idea. Have you spotted the problem? It's simply not agile. Where's our Zen in KK? Where's our devolved authority? Where's our people at the front line making decisions? The person at the top knows least about the customers. The person there at the top has least customer contact. It's the people on the front line who know the most about what the customers want. And it's the people on the front line who are working with the machines that deliver the products and services who need to make the decisions and make them timely. So, interpreted like this, OKRs are not much more than command and control. And that's why me and other people are unhappy with them. But we can interpret them as agile friendly. So, your leader stands not necessarily at the top, better thought of at the center. Think of your organization as a series of concentric circles rather than a top-to-bottom thing. Your leaders are at the top. They decide big questions like resourcing. They set the tone for culture. They set out the purpose, the missions, the big goals. But they don't tell you how to do it. They deliberately leave white space, which may seem neglectful, but actually, you can't see that, can you? Yeah. It says white space there very faintly. No, go back. They leave white space and they say to you, how can you help? You are the people on the front line. You are the teams. You know the product. You know the technology. How can you help us achieve our purpose and goals? And every few months, you and your team reply with your OKRs. You define an API for your team. You say, in the next quarter, my team will do this. In the next quarter, my team are going to achieve this objective. And you offer these up. and you feed them up the hierarchy. But it's not all one way. Because we're agile, we like feedback. So the people in the center, the people who are setting the big questions, they give you feedback. And this becomes a strategy debugger. You offer up your OKRs, and your senior leader says, I don't understand why you're doing this. I don't see how this fits in with what we're trying to do. And you say, no, it doesn't, but we've got a customer who pays us a lot of money and is really asking for this. And your senior leader didn't know that. Or maybe your senior leader hasn't expressed themselves properly. And when they see what you propose to do, they can say, maybe I didn't tell you something. And you can debug their strategy. And you can have that conversation. And you can give feedback. So what you're doing when you have this two-step process is creating a strategy debugger. Because strategy is not a plan. Strategy is not something that's decided once a year by the senior leaders and their management consultancy friends at an offsite. Strategy is an emergent property. Strategy is forward-looking. It's also backward-looking. And using this kind of process to use OKRs as feedback allows you to create a debugger. So strategy is emergent. It also means alignment is emergent. And it means self-organization is emergent. You cannot say to a team, you are a self-organizing team, go and self-organize. Anything you do to make a team self-organizing kills it. Alignment, organization, strategy, they are all properties that emerge over time. And by going through this cycle every few months, we allow them to emerge, we allow feedback. So, now we know this, we can start to think about outcomes over just doing stuff. Your objectives are now a just-in-time story generator. I remember having dinner with Mary and Tom Poppendike about 13, 14 years ago, and Mary saying, backlogs are a problem. In Lean, whenever we see a backlog, we want to eliminate it. Backlogs shouldn't exist. Why have we got all these backlogs? Well, the way you replace backlogs in manufacturing is with just-in-time. And the same is true here. Rather than building a big backlog of stories you might do in the future, throw the backlog away, or at least put it in the back seat. And every quarter, you're going to set your objectives. And every time you want to know what should we work on next, what should we schedule our next replenishment meeting, our next sprint planning, our next whatever, you're going to go to your objectives, and they are a machine. You're going to crank the handle, and your machine is going to generate stories. You don't have this big backlog of stories you go fishing in. You say, right here, right now, given what we now know about our customers and our technology and the business strategy and everything else, what is the right piece of work to do next? And you keep going back to your objectives and driving from your objectives. I'm sick and fed up of hearing about companies that have your Scrum process and your backlog, and then they add OKRs. Right? You've just increased your whip. You're now trying to do backlog and you're trying to do OKRs. If nothing else, decide how the backlog and the OKRs meet up. Which comes first? And for me, the objectives come first and override any backlog. We decide the objectives strategically, and they then generate the work we're going to do today, tomorrow, in the next few weeks. So this also means we're going to impose a giant sprint cycle, super cycle, if you like, on top of all of this. You know, I've got sprints up here because sadly most people in the world do Scrum of some version, but however you're doing it, it doesn't matter. The basic idea is we've got a super cycle, which is normally about 12 weeks. I'm not sure it shouldn't be shorter, perhaps longer, but most people do 12 weeks. Every time you want to know sprint planning, backlog replenishment, whatever. Go to your OKRs, crank the handle, generate some stories. And then, same as ever. At the beginning, you set your goals, you start doing it. Sprint, sprint, sprint. At the end, close out what you do, review, how can we do better? It's just, you're not fishing in the backlog. You may still have a backlog of good ideas that somebody once thought you might use, but you're constantly going back to your goals and your objectives, and you're saying, what do we need to do? If somebody wrote a story last year that's useful, by all means do it. But if there's something you need to do to advance on your goal, and it's not in the backlog, write it out and do it. So sometimes I go as far as to say, nuke your backlog, throw it away. And that's a pretty radical idea for most teams. Truth is, when you've got 1,000 items in your backlog, it's meaningless. And when I say that in settings like this, there's regularly one or two people in the audience who say, yeah, my team do that. We throw the backlog away regularly. You know, the longer something is in the backlog, the more likely is it's lost value. Backlogs are a problem. Oh, I think I've got 3 minutes left. So, if you've not entered the draw, stick your name in, and I can take a few questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, we're waiting for the questions.
I've stunned them into silence.
No questions. Everything was clear.
I'm wondering how does it fit in the environment when we are dealing with outsourcing a lot of solution outside of the company?
Yeah.
So we are not having a team, basically. Or we have a team, but which is, you know, we cannot share. We are prevented to share some information with them, for example.
So I'm just trying to get to the names to do. Actually, I'm just. If you can't share information with your outsourcer, why the hell have you subcontracted to them? You must be working for Dr. No or Blofeld or someone. You know, it's James Bond baddies. How does someone know to build a moon base or a rocket base or an intercontinental missile for Bond baddie? How do they not know they're building something to destroy the world? Yeah, your outsourcers need to know. So if you're keeping them in the dark, you've got a problem. You don't trust them. You shouldn't be working with them anyway. You need to improve that relationship. It sounds like you've got a legalized trust problem. So this won't work everywhere, you know, and you know, if you have KPIs that are working brilliantly and driving your work, don't bother. You know, if backlogs are working perfectly for you, don't bother. If you can't trust your outsourcers, that's a problem. If you can trust your outsourcers, they will want to be your partner. Good outsourcers always say, we're here to partner with you. So you want to share your goals with them, and you want them to propose how they, with their specialist skills, their specialist knowledge of the product or whatever, how they can support you. So rather than you telling them, you say, this is what we're trying to do. How can you help us? And hopefully you like what they hear. Hopefully they are listening enough to you and understanding your domain that they can propose something useful they can do for you. Just taking a shopping list of things you want them to do, they'll probably do it, but you know, that so often ends in problems.
We have another question.
Yeah.
Let's imagine we have OKRs in the company. They were developed by top management. The development of the backlog, like, okay, how can we reach OKRs with our team? Okay. Would you do that together with a team or the product owner? How would you do that?
Okay. Oh, God, why? I shouldn't try and do two things at once, should I? I've increased my whip, and now I'm not answering your question, and I'm not getting the names for this draw I want to do. Back to your question. How do you develop the backlog? So I would start talking about those senior people. What are the objectives they want to reach? Before they come up with some OKRs for you, go and try and find out from them what it is they're trying to achieve, their bigger goals. And then with your team, sit down and say to the teams, how do we think we can contribute towards this? Because also your team has specialist knowledge about the product, the technology, the customer. The product leader, whether you call them product owner, product manager, business analyst, or something else, the product leader is the specialist in understanding what customers want. So I expect them to take the lead in that conversation and have some ideas, but you want the whole team to be involved because the whole team are going to be delivering this thing. The whole team are going to be involved. And A, it's fairness that they have a voice in this. And B, if they're in the discussion where you talk about what your objectives and goals are, they're going to understand it so much more. And finally, C, you're bringing all their brain power to the game. You're getting all their inspiration, all their knowledge, all their neurodiversity, their different takes on the world, and you're harnessing the brain power. Because the machines do the work, it's not our fingers or our muscles that are the bottleneck, it's our brain. So involve the whole team. Then take that back to your managers and say, I know you're going to give us our OKRs next week. We had a chat in the team, and this is what we think we should be doing. And get in there before them.
We have another.
I have a question about aligning the solution with say company's strategy and making sure that what company offers is like consistent. So where in this framework, or maybe where within the OKRs lies the responsibility for ensuring that, you know, like the solution for achieving the objective will be consistent?
Because you're going to use a debugger. There is no coordinating authority. You're going to be doing this because your leadership team are going to be saying, this is what we want to be doing, this is where we want to be heading, these are our goals. And the teams are saying, we can contribute to this in this way. And once you've got those two things written down, you can look at them and you can say, oh, the leader wants to go to Mars and the team want to go to the moon. Those two things don't match. Now, if you simply tell the team, we should be going to Mars, and the team really would much rather go to the moon, the team will start setting out plans to go to the moon and pretending they're going to Mars. You need to let it emerge, because if you give the order from the center, you're not allowing them to have decision power, you're not giving them authority, you're not harnessing their skills. But what you can do is when you've got these things, you know, perhaps not on paper, but you've got this statement of the bigger objective and the team objectives, you can have that discussion and it can emerge over time. Because to be frank, we don't have a great deal of success with master planning, top-down planning, particularly in knowledge work, telling people what to do. So let it emerge. It may take a little bit longer than simply telling people what to do, but you're more likely to get something that works.
Okay, so thank you very much. We have a chocolate for you. So thank you. That's the...
Thank you very much. This plan of mine to do the book draw while you're in the room all worked perfectly fine when I was testing all of this, but what with phones and laptops and so on, I'm really struggling. If you give me a couple of minutes, I will come. Anyone remember the Wi-Fi password?
Beyond frameworks, but maybe we can do it differently. Like everyone that wants the book, just step up, and you will give it to someone. How about that?
Oh, hang on, this
You
might...
can do it like with the eyes closed so that you don't choose based on the looks.
Generate random... Well, if I can get the names...
Generated random. That's a good
I am
idea.
connected to the internet now, so here's... Hey, I got the names. I got the 21 names. Now I've got the names. Yeah, so there's Dommy at the top, and there's Jen's, and take the names. Now you're going to love this bit. If I can plug this back in.
He have a circle.
Come back. Come. Okay, I'll spin it. You can see the random selector.
Yeah, I see
You want
it.
to read out the name? Read out the name.
Wojciech?
Andre.
Andre.
Has Andre left already? He hasn't put a last name. How many Andres are there in the room? There's 2.
The one that didn't wrote the last name.
Did you both enter? That's you. Okay. What a surprise. Congratulations. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for messing around my technology.